Everybody who is in attendance tonight and who's watching on channel 1303 or Facebook Live or YouTube Live, or if you're watching a taped version of this in the next day, week, month. This is the Thursday, September 8th Town Board Workshop. Tonight we have 3 agenda items. The 2 of them are public hearings. And we're going to start out, because I was out at the front, and I think the majority, about 50 to 2 actually, of the people that are here tonight are here about the expansion of the consolidated drainage district. So, we're going to do the reverse order of how it's on the agenda. We're going to do the public hearing to amend the original bond resolution for the wastewater treatment plant Phase 2 project. So, Attorney Genesi, I am opening that public hearing. I got to get the sign-in sheets. There was one gentleman that signed in about the wastewater treatment plant. So we'll get a little test run with what should be the shorter public hearing, but while town clerk, tax collector Dolly Squires getting tax receiver, I shouldn't say that. For any of those who have not been to a public hearing in the past, there is some rules of engagement per se, and that's why I tried to be out front talking to each of you as you came in, so that if you signed in, you have the option to get on the podium for no more than 5 minutes to say your piece about the topic at hand. If you didn't sign in, the way this is structured, you really aren't being heard because only the people at the podium are involved per se in talking at the public hearing. So I hope I was clear to everybody that I really was trying to sell it, Charlie, that if you don't know if you want to talk, you should sign in. When we get to your name, if you've heard an explanation that answers your questions, you always have the right to say, you know what, I'm not going to get on the podium. I don't need to talk. So there was one person who signed in for the wastewater treatment plant bonding, and that is Donald Paul. Donald, would you like to take the podium?
I've got very little information on this. I've been digging for it. I'm at 202 Woodsfield Drive, and
Yes.
pretty close to the waste treatment plant. And I can't say for sure, but sometimes I have detected some odors from the plant. I'm not sure if it's from them, but nearby it may be. And I'm concerned about the air quality coming from the plant. I know there's projected upgrades coming, and I don't know what the time frame of what is going on. I know that phase 1 seems to be near completion. I don't know if there's going to be a phase 2, 3, 4. Are we talking 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? There's not much information I find on it. I know that there's been a generator installed, and when it's running, I do hear that. I don't know if there's anything that can be done to reduce the amount of noise from that. I don't know if there's going to be additional vehicle traffic from this. I guess pretty much those are some of my major questions, and I haven't got much information on it. So.
Okay. Thank you, Donald. And I know we don't have anybody else set up to speak tonight. I know that Rick Canale is our chief plant operator at the sewer plant, and Art Patrone is the director of the sewer plant, our Deputy DPW Commissioner. There was about 13 straight board meetings back throughout 2021 on this phase 2 of the sewer plant. And there has been probably 6 or 7 board meeting discussions like this year. I know the people on Woods View, some have reached out to us, and I think there's a gentleman that said he'd be the neighborhood rep for a lot of the same questions Donald asked, that there are answers for. So I think offline, we'll get Donald maybe in touch with the neighborhood rep from Woods View and or you guys to answer those questions. I know you guys are, I don't want to, trying to figure out maybe some plant tours for the community and all that, so that's that. So, since we didn't have anybody else signed to talk on the sewer plant, any questions, town board members?
No.
All right, I am going to close out the public hearing on the amended original bond resolution for the wastewater treatment plant phase 2 project. And at this point, Charlie, I know there's a sequence of resolutions here, and I am going to make a motion. The town board of the town of Webster, Monroe County, pursuant to section 202B of the town law, determining that it is in the public interest to undertake certain improvements to the town of Webster Consolidated Sewer District. Charlie, I just want to make sure, because people want to get home.
You don't have to go through all that. I think this, the main key is that it is in the public interest.
Okay.
Where you need to, it's just, again, this is sort of repetitious. You're right, you see the night before.
Okay. Because there's 2 resolutions that Bond Council and Municipal Solutions has us doing, and therefore I just want to make sure, for the board's sake and for the public's sake, the differentiation between these 2 is known. Yeah.
You can reference in the second paragraph, the
Okay.
prior one, and then maybe the one
Yeah.
underneath it.
All right, so on this first one, I'm going to say again, motion of the town board of the town of Webster, whereas the project manager engineer has informed the town that due to significant rise in cost of materials and labor, the estimated maximum cost of the project shall need to be increased by $13,342,000 to a total of $44,340,000. And whereas a resolution adopted on August 18th of the regular board meeting and public hearing shall be held on September 8th to consider this increase to $44.34 million. That is my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
All right, and Town Attorney Janessa, I can only imagine that the council on bonds, the reason why there's a second one is to describe that the first one, this motion is an amendatory bond resolution of the town board of the town of Webster, Monroe County, amending and restating the bond resolution dated September 16th, 2021, relating to the authorization of the issuance of up to $30,998,000 in serial bonds of the town to undertake certain improvements to the town of Webster Consolidated District, whereas the engineer, project manager has informed the town that due to significant rise in cost of materials and labor, the estimated maximum cost of the project shall need to be increased by $13,342,000 to $44,340,000. And whereas on September 8th, 2022, after a duly called public hearing held on the same date, we are adopting this amended bond resolution. That is my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
All righty. So now that we did the first public hearing, let's go into the second one. I have a favor to ask of the attendees. Kim Doyle in my office, in the supervisor's office, and I printed out 50 cheat sheets in preparation for this meeting. I handed them all out. At the beginning, I handed out one to a husband and one to a wife. If you look at your neighbor and they don't have the 2 pages, and you would be so kind if you're a husband and wife or here with 2 people, to share it with somebody that does not have it. And I will tell you this, as I said as I was talking to people at the sign-in table, you know, we're human and we all learn from our mistakes. In hindsight, when we mailed out to the affected residents for this expansion, the letter or memo you got last week, I wish I would have put this 2-page cheat sheet in there, because the 90 or so emails, calls this week from people who got that letter, this cheat sheet essentially encompasses 95% of the answers to the questions we got, and had those emailers and callers and some people coming in person to talk to us go from maybe a very highly questioning, what the heck is this, or agitated to, oh, well, that makes sense, and that was that. And from the people that I talked to and met, I didn't see any of them here, so I think it answered their questions to the point they didn't feel they need to come tonight. So I apologize, because in retrospect I should have sent the cheat sheet. I bet you the room would have had 5 people in it instead of 55. But if, as I said out there, as you sign in, you may read that cheat sheet, and what you came here for, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And if you signed in, when we get to your name, if you're like, no, Tom, I'm good, I don't need to get up on the podium, then we will say thank you, and we'll move on to the next name. But as I said out there to everybody, if you didn't sign in, and suddenly in 20 minutes, half an hour into this, you're like, you know, I want to get on that podium. There is a decorum, there is a rules of engagement. That is not going to happen. All right? So we have to keep some sense of order on this, and we tried to set it up right from the beginning. So, with that being said, I'm going to open the public hearing. But before we start with the list of people that are going to get up, there are some things that I want to make sure Mary, as our town engineer, and Pat Stevens, who is the highway superintendent, explain about, because one of the biggest questions is the units. And people thinking, why am I getting charged for 2 units? And I think you guys can give an explanation to that might lead us off in the right direction. So I'm opening the public hearing on this, and I'm asking Mary and Pat to present on that quickly.
Correct. I'll run through it quickly. As Tom said, we've had a lot of calls and questions about this, and seeing so many people here, obviously, the letter that was sent out yielded a lot of those questions. So we'll just touch on a couple of the biggest ones that I've seen hit. So the units is probably the biggest one. The section that speaks to the unit, and then the price per unit is put together at the bottom. This letter was not meant to be specific to your property. So the unit explanation at the bottom is a generic version of what will be charged against what type of lot. So if you just have a home, you're going to get charged 1 unit. There's no factor of the other section there that has 1 unit for 3,500 square feet. That is for, so the items that are listed are residential, agricultural, and vacant. And then there's the units assigned to those. Other section would be things like industrial property, commercial property, businesses, things of that nature. Because they operate differently from a drainage standpoint, would be charged a different number of units than a residence. If you just have your house, or you own multiple houses, each house you own would be considered a resident, and that would each get charged 1 unit, which, as in the letter in 2023, is proposed at a single rate of $40 per unit. So that was the biggest section, is, you know, how do I calculate the square footage of impervious that I have in my house and that type of thing. That doesn't apply to residential properties, which the majority of the people that got the letters were that. That was the intent of this, as outlined in some of our previous information put out, that really the goal here is to balance the fees that are currently being charged to a large percentage of the town, and make it so that every residential property in town pays the same rate, so that all residents that benefit from the drainage maintenance improvements and reporting that we do are charged equally across everything. So that was one of the major functions, and then the other one is, what does this district do? So we do have a 19-page presentation that's up online that we gave back in June here at the town board meeting. If anybody wants to look it up, I'm happy to give people copies if you're not able to get online and that type of thing. But it does have a lot of information. In general, the Special Consolidated Drainage District, which is where this fee is applied to maintenance on common waterways. So a lot of our streams, creeks, any drainage way that benefits multiple units. If you have a drainage way in your backyard that goes behind 20 houses, it's likely it's under easement from the town, and therefore we maintain it so that it drains, so that we don't have flooding. And the reason everybody benefits from the maintenance of those items, streams, creeks, common waterways, is it prevents flooding and it prevents erosion. It mentions in the letter that several of the town's watersheds are impaired. They're impaired by sediment, which is erosion from banks, dirt essentially, getting into the streams and then migrating down the streams to the lake. The facilities that we maintain, whether it's ponds, streams, and things like that, they all prevent that action from happening. They either catch that silt or they allow developments, whether it's housing tracts or commercial properties, to slow the release of the runoff from their parking lots and buildings to a rate that shouldn't impact the stream to cause it. So whether you're benefiting from not having your property washed away by streams or dirt landing on your property, or the road's not flooding because the trees and different blockages are kept out of the streams that are in town, so that the roads don't flood, so your properties don't flood. That's why it benefits everybody in town, is these watersheds are large, and if you have blockages and they're not maintained, the whole town floods, and that blocks roads and common features that everyone uses. So it just makes sense to have everyone contributing to the portion of the town that maintains that, not just people that might have a ditch or might have a pond. It really benefits the functionality of the infrastructure overall, including roads and things like flooding. So I think that was the explanation I found most commonly, what people were misunderstanding, maybe not being clear on without having gone in and read the presentation, which until you got the letter, maybe you didn't think you wanted to go and see the presentation. We now see that that's very clearly the case. So that was my bit. The other section that maybe Mary can touch on really quickly is that the regulations as far as the town's requirements to report to the DEC about how we manage that program as a town. It is the town's responsibility. We have to do a lot more reporting, documentation, following up with different facilities that manage their own. The ones that my department doesn't maintain, we have to follow up with them annually, make sure they're doing what they need to do in order to make sure that we don't have these issues that I'm describing with erosion and different things of that nature. Mary's department handles the compliance with that program, and those are ever-increasing requirements, correct?
Yes, so the town is an MS4, which is a municipal separate storm sewer system. There are 6 aspects to that program. So it's public education, such as tonight, public participation, again happening tonight, so that's wonderful. The illicit discharge program, so that's making sure that there's not cross connections between sanitary sewers and the storm sewers, so that you're not discharging things like your sanitary waste out into the creeks. It also focuses on making sure that like soapy, sudsy water isn't getting into your storm system, dumpsters aren't located right next to catch basins, things of that nature where you'd be polluting the waterways directly, because that water that goes into the catch basins and the creeks never gets treated by the sewer treatment plant, so it's going into the lake eventually. There's also construction stormwater management, so that's all the measures that contractors take in town. You see the black silt fence that goes around the perimeter of most of the construction sites. There's also sediment traps that they put in catch basins when it's under construction, and there's a lot of exposed earth in that point in time. And they're also required to do inspections by trained engineers. They're required to have training, the contractors themselves. And the town reviews all those inspections and follows up when there's violations on sites. Post-construction stormwater management, which is a lot of what highway does, what Pat just touched on, but there's also a component of tracking what the commercial properties in town are doing. So there's over 30 commercial ponds in town, and we send out letters annually to make sure that a licensed engineer is doing inspections on those ponds and making sure that they're functioning properly. If they've been silt loaded, we require them to dig them back out to their design capacity so that they're functioning the way that they're supposed to. And then there's also a municipal component to the stormwater program, so making sure that our own facilities are in compliance with the regulations, such as the highway facility, the Parks Barn, and other areas where there's yard and site work that's going on regularly on town campuses. So those are all things that are documented and followed up on in town. It's a big task, as everyone can probably see as they drive around. There's a lot of development going on, so we're in charge of regulating that and trying to prevent further issues in the creeks and streams and make amends where there needs to be. So there's projects going on. Finn Park, for example, is a retention facility that we're putting in Shipbuilders Creek watershed to slow down the water there and help with sedimentation. So we're trying to build more capacity so that there's less flooding along that waterway. So projects like these will benefit from the increased revenue of this district being expanded.
Thank you, Pat and Mary. We have 29 people that signed in.
Excuse me, Supervisor.
Yes.
Did that pretty much sum up your cheat sheet? Because we don't have it in front of us. Are there any other comments that you want to add from your cheat sheet before we get started?
Well, it's funny that you should say that, Patty, because, I'm trying to be a little judicious on my words so other people can talk.
So I will ask you to be judicious with your
I will
words
be
if there's
judicious. I
anything you
will
want
say
to add.
that for the people that have the cheat sheet, and I'll pass it down, I thought I would have copies for each
No,
of
that's
them.
okay.
We ran out. Making a lot of mistakes on this thing.
It's all right.
I would ask, first of all, like I said at the beginning, I think this is great. I love when this boardroom is full. The community that gets involved, it's a better community. Please do me a favor. Please sign up for our board agenda alerts. You get an email, you get a text that says, this is what the board meeting agenda is. As you probably saw from page 1, we've had a lot of board meetings on this issue. This year, wasn't much prior to this year, except for 1995 and 1969. We didn't have alerts back in 1995 and 1969. But we have them now. And I know you all get a lot of texts and you all get a lot of emails, but you don't want to all of a sudden find out about something late in the game where this town board and our town engineer and our highway superintendent and our finance director have been going through it for a year and a half. You'd want to know about that right up front and follow it, right? Knowledge is power. So I would ask that you do that, and anybody who wants information on that offline, please contact the supervisor's office and we'll show you how to sign up for those. Other than that, I'm going to just start the list. One thing I will say is that we'll have everybody go through. If they have comments, which a public hearing is about, that's great. You got 5 minutes or less to give your comments. If you have questions, what I'd like to do is write down the question, and then at the end, if we've got 7 or 8 very unique questions, then we will have the subject matter expert answer them at that time. But that might mean when I get to your name, you're like, you know what, that question that I have has already been asked. I don't need to get up there and ask it. We are going to make sure then the questions, or make an attempt to answer these questions tonight. So, with that being said, Walter Workload, did I say that correctly? You are number 1. And if I pronounce people's names wrong, I really apologize. But Walter, if you can give your name and address, please.
Walter Workload, 1048 Bay Road, Webster. I had a question, but it's a very short one, but I also had a comment. When I received the letter, the word drainage is very general. It didn't explain what this was all about. It just said drainage and we're going to be charged an extra $30 or whatever the amount is. I don't know. By drainage, do you mean whatever comes from the sky, or do you mean that whatever is generated by the residential home? What does it cover? What are you charging extra for?
Okay.
I know he almost answered my
Is that-
question,
is
but
that-
then she mentioned affluence from homes and
Okay.
whatever.
Walter,
That's-
is that your question? Do you have any?
Well, I do also have a comment.
Okay.
When they expanded Bay Road, moved it over, we were in a predicament where we couldn't hook up to the sewers. The town said, if you fork up $30,000, we'll put a pumping station there. You and your neighbors can put in $10,000 each. I believe in the collective good. My kids went to Catholic school all throughout high school. I paid school taxes and I didn't mind it. I believe in it. I wish the town would have the collective good to take care also, because this, like you said, is all the collective good to take care of everybody. I wish they would have taken care of the people that weren't hooked up to the sewers on Bay Road and put the onus on them to pay for it. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Walter. Next up is my good friend Debbie Lester.
Debbie Lester, 634 Gravel. Mill Creek goes through my property, and if they go take care of this is going to be great. The storm sewer and gravel also connects into the, right in my house and goes through. But right now the pipe that's halfway through my house or my property is 3/4 full of silt. Does this mean you will finally come and clean it out? I've been asking for 20 years to have it cleaned out, the creek. That's my big question, because it's part of the storm sewer and Mill Creek.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Oh, boy. No, I got it. I can, Gail Sidori? Sure. Okay. Oh, boy. Oh, no, Karen Santangelo? Kara Santangelo.
Hi, Kara Santangelo. I'm representing 1205 Russo Drive. So I'm curious how the multifamily properties are going to be treated. I know you mentioned all the businesses, all that good stuff, but would we fall under that other unit of the 3,500 square feet, or how's that going to work?
Okay. Like, is it a two-family, a three-family, a four, you talking about?
Multifamily.
Multifamily, two-family, three, okay.
No, much more than that. I would think you're going to treat them all the same, though, whether it's a two-family house or a 8-family building,
Okay.
right?
We're gonna answer, that's the third question I got on the list here. Oh, I guess we're leaving. We really are leaving. No, Larry Petrelli.
My name is Larry Petrelli. I live on Salt Road, 530 Salt Road. And I was wondering that most of this stuff's been answered, but the only question I got is we have our neighbors on Shallow Creek. A lot of times in the winter, there's sewers out by the road, and they get just flooded, and they get blocked. And I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it's coming from Shallow Creek Creek, or you've probably seen it, cleared it a couple times. But is that part of this? Are they going to help those neighbors out a little bit?
I got the question written down.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Michael Keim.
Michael Kai, 225 County Line Road. Got a quick question. Our property is such that the water on our drainage goes across the Wayne County of the road goes into the town of Ontario. We don't dump into anything in the town of Webster. How are we affected by this? It's just a question.
I got it written down.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Kathy Van Boris.
Kathy Van Boris on 232 Basket Road. I am in the area that has the septic systems. I'm objecting to being included in the consolidated districts. Apparently, according to your letter, we are grandfathered, and I just don't feel you have the right to tell us we're not grandfathered all of a sudden. Over the last few years, I've spent over $600 to maintain my system, and I'm not asking you to pay for that. And I'm already helping to keep your creeks cleaner because where my property is located, my leach lines are nowhere near any of the creeks. So I'm already helping you keep it clean. Yes, there are other things that we benefit from, so perhaps we could pay 10 to 20% of this increase that you're talking about. If not, what are the town's plans to bring sewers down Basket Road? And one other thing, from your handout, you mentioned that you're taking care of a whole lot of new people that move into this area with sewers, while some of your residents that have been here for years and years have none. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm going to break from my statement about waiting to the end for questions. I think it is important to make a very important distinguishing characteristic between septic is sanitary sewers. Drainage is stormwater. And when we get into answering the questions that are here, I'm sure that Pat and Mary, because the subject matter experts, will answer them. Septic systems, bringing sewers to town, everything that you said, Kathy, that is sanitary sewers. That is yuck. Stormwater, drainage, creeks, ponds. We don't want septic and our sewers getting into the ponds and the creeks and this and that. Two completely different topics, and I appreciate you getting up there, but somewhat unrelated. They're very unrelated. So, Rich Cummins.
I'm Rich Cummins. I live on Clem Road, and I have just one question. In the letter, you said that the cost would be $40, down from $43, and that's a projection for 2023. What is your projection for the next 10 years in terms of how much that will go up each year?
Right. I think this says Peter Lloyd.
Peter Lloyd, live at 233 Webster Road. Two questions. First question is, we have a ditch that flows. We live right on the corner, right before you get to the lake. We have a ditch that fills with water, and I can't mow it for several months of the year. And it flows from Webster Road back to a culvert, and I don't know if that's an easement or what, but it fills with water, and it's very hard to deal with in the spring. So I wonder, how do I find out if it's an easement, and could the town take a look at that sometime? seems to be water from the road. Second question is, if you're back flushing your pool, I just want to know about that. Is that something that you're checking for? Could you get fined for? Where should you back flush your pool under these new regulations?
Thank you. Joan Batzel.
I'm Joanne Batzel. We're at 420 Basket Road, but I'm also speaking for our neighbor at 428. Our home was built in 1950. Their home was built in the 90s. I'm assuming we got our notice, and these people all got our notice because we've been grandfathered out. That's my assumption. Back when Basket Road was widened a few years ago, there was a drainage issue from a swampy area across Basket Road from us on the west side of Basket Road. We're on the east side. And at that time, the town put in piping and a major ditch down the side of our property that's about 750 feet long. They did a great job, cleared it all out. It's since been growing in. They've only been able to kind of clear half of the ditch, but it's going right to 4 Mile Creek that runs right behind our house. So it is designed to take drainage from the road down to the creek. So the clearing of that ditch has been an ongoing issue. This year, of course, it's been very dry. We haven't had standing water very much at all. But the drainage from 428 was shut off from the road, and it's kind of diverted over into the drainage ditch that's on our property. And there's an issue with clearing the vegetation on that side as well. So we're just wondering, is the town going to clear all that, keep it clear, or what the plan is? Out by the road, they're mowing the ditch, and that seems to be fine, but it's the ditch that's running from the road back to 4 Mile Creek that's the issue.
Thank you, John. Steve Galante.
Steve Galante, 597 County Line Road. Hopefully an easy question. My property, when you are saying the $40 per home, is it only for properties that actually have a home on them? Because my property, I have actually 3 pieces of property that are all together, and I have a 6-acre lot and a 3-acre lot that are basically empty. So is the $40 just for the piece of property with the actual address that my house is on?
I'm going to break again and say that I think you explained that, Pat, that the 0 and 0 on the letter is for vacant land?
Correct.
I'm sorry. I didn't
So,
see that.
You could
Yeah,
have
'cause
three.
unfortunately, I don't have it, I didn't have it, my
Okay.
house is.
And did everybody understand that? Like if you have 3 parcels of land, you have your house on one, but you have 2
Oh, okay.
acres of empty,
I sort of-
that's a 0 for the unit. We're not
Thank you.
charging you. Okay? Thank you, Steve. Nope, I want to make sure people get clarification on that stuff. All right, I think next is Alan Reddig? Alan? Okay. I'm going to say Alan decided no. Next is, oh boy. I hope I do you justice, Vic. Vic? That's exactly what I was going to say. You know something? You stole my thunder.
Vic Anuskowitz, 440 Basket Road. So I guess my I do have a question and a comment. My question kind of backs up what Mrs. Basic was asking about maintaining the ditch that goes from Basket Road to 4 Mile Creek. It is overgrown. That you guys have the easement, and that needs to be taken care of. We at 440, we have a 10-acre parcel to the south of our residence, and when county supposedly fixed Basket Road, they replaced the culvert underneath Basket Road. And what they did was great, except they raised my end of that pipe, and now it's trapping water when it does rain hard. Is that going to be addressed? So I mean, the water that's coming off the road, all that water from even farther south, almost to Schlegel Road, comes into my property and goes out that culvert pipe to the west. And so we can potentially get a lot of water there. And it was just an engineering fluke. In fact, I had quite a heated argument with the engineer when they were doing that at the time. I asked him why they raised the pipe, and he explained that they just wanted pitch. Well, the pitch is great as long as the pipe is low enough, but the pipe is not low enough. So I wonder if that's going to be addressed as part of this, because that is road drainage, or at least in the future. Obviously, it's not going to be because of this, because this is just expanding all that. But will that be taken care of once this is all expanded? Who takes care of that, the county or the town? So that needs to be addressed. The other thing, going back to a basics question, was we have a farm, 20-acre farm, and the property that our residents and most of the farm buildings is on potentially drains to that drainage ditch that was in question that's slightly overgrown. And it's a weird setup. There's a culvert that goes from Sergeant's house, which is 2 houses to the north of us, goes underneath the ground and then attaches to that drainage ditch. And that is overgrown, and that's what my property drains into. That whole little postage stamp of property really needs to be addressed. Somebody's got to look at that, because again, this has been a dry year, but boy, we've had a lot of water in the past, and it's just, you can't get on that property. I can't cut it, I can't do anything with it. And it just, I don't want to be called the scofflaw, because I can't keep my property maintained because I can't get on it to cut it, because it becomes a swamp. So, there you go. Think about that.
Thank you, Vic. John Pinkerton.
Just have a few questions. I'm sorry. John Pinkerton, 145 Salt Road, right next to 4 Mile Creek, which I feel is one of the main drainage ditches, whatever, through the town of Webster. And I'd like to know, you said you inspect the drainage systems through Webster. And the reason I ask that is that I've lived there for 44 years, and like I say, from me to town, that's where 4 Mile Creek is to my house, okay? Never seen anybody inspect 4 Mile Creek. The reason I state that is because the previous supervisor, Joe Herbst, relation to me, I was talking to him, and they said they had just recently found, off of Lake Road, a culvert that was backed up with tons of raw logs. And it took like 2 days of truck moving to get that cleaned out. And I find that very strange that if you're inspecting this, that it would take 2 days of work to get the clean out. And who determines if there is a problem in a drainage area? And the last one is, what's the qualification for a drainage problem? All these people have got, water in their backyards or stuff like that. Who really determines whether Webster is responsible for a drainage problem on a certain piece of property? Thank you.
There's a couple of questions in there.
Who determines? Okay. All right, thank you, Jen. Is it Rick Furia? Furia?
I'm good, you want my 40 bucks now? Just keep it there, we're all good, man.
Oh boy. Thanks, Rick. John Baldwin? Can I double up and get his 42, Rick, or?
Hi, I'm John Baldwin, 1687 Schlegel Road. Just want to make a quick comment about septic systems that you said they're different. Well, a working septic system will put clean or relatively clean water into the groundwater system. Not working septic system will put unhealthy water into the groundwater system or the drainage system. So there is a little bit difference between the sanitary sewer and a septic system of working one and a non-working one and what it could impact. But the reason why I'm here is a few years ago, the highway department came through and I have a stream coming through my property, and to the east of me, there's 2 properties, and the highway department came through and cleared the stream out, cleared the trees and brush up to 20 feet on both sides of the stream. They came through and cleaned it out, and they took everything right down to bare earth. And when it rained after that, I had a lot of sediment that came into my property because there was nothing to hold it back after they ripped up everything that was holding the sediment in place. And my question is, when you do go through these places and clean up, are you going to do it so that it doesn't cause this extra erosion to happen when we do get a rainstorm? And that's my big concern, is the sediment that has caused in my stream. I've had to I had a 12-foot little bridge that got over it, so I could hit my lawnmower over it. I had to tear that out and put a 16-foot one in. So I've had considerable erosion because of the poor management of the way that the stream has been handled over the years. Thank you.
Thanks, John. John Glavich.
Hello, yeah, my name is John Glavich. I live at 847 Clem Road, and I have one question. I've been living there since 1970 on Clem Road, 847, and they built Shan's home behind me. They put a retention pond in there, and ever since then, every time we have a rain that's maybe an inch, I get water in my basement because my house is built in 1919, and it's hooked up to the drainage across the street. And I had it filled up with water, like 4 inches in my basement, 4 times since 2000. You know that pond, right? Yeah, I called about that place. Chance owns that pond, or that was put in there, and now the guy is in charge of it is Isaac. And he's got, anytime he cuts the grass or cuts down trees, he's putting it all around. What happens is that stuff goes in it, it goes into the main, clogs up, the pond runs right down my driveway, into the creek across the street, and it backs up in my basement. Nobody cleaned that up. Nobody told him to get rid of it. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you can say that up on the podium. Blaze Midnight.
Hi, I'm Blaze Midnight, 950 Shoemaker Road. Many of you esteemed board members may remember my dad, who has been a longtime resident of this town. And before there was a water management system in this town, he had built a good-sized pond on his property. And when they started talking about water management, he had the foresight to know that it was a bad idea. It has done nothing. I've lived on that property for my entire life, 62 years. And all I have seen is with every improvement in the water management, so-called water management improvement, has had negative effects on our pond. You guys tout that it's going to prevent flooding and it's going to prevent erosion. And what has happened to our pond, first of all, is what used to be a pond that ran at almost a consistent rate its entire year, all year round, with minor fluctuations when you had rain, has become an all or nothing. So when we get rain, we get a massive flood of water coming down that nearly erodes the dam that holds the pond together, and has required us to do many, many ingenious things to help prevent us from losing our pond. And then when we have a dry spell, the water stops flowing almost completely. And that has never been the case until, as this time has gone on, this water management system has slowly affected that. The other thing is that I just want to make a point that when I'm sitting here listening, you guys make it sound like they're pouring drinking water into our ponds. And believe me, it's far from that. All this storm sewer water is contaminated with all kinds of chemicals. There's lawn fertilizer, there's grass clippings that go down the drain, there's people washing their cars in their driveway going down the storm sewer. There are people, I'm sure, that are probably emptying their motor oil down that thing because it's a convenient way to dispose of it. The water coming down these systems is not clean. It's far from clean. And our pond is a perfect example of that. Over the years since this water management system has started, the quality of the water in our pond has continually become worse and worse and worse. And we have had excessive algae and weed blooms in the pond to such an extent that it covers the entire pond and causes massive fish kills in this pond. And it's a large pond. It's about 2.5 to 3 acres. It's very large. And we have had massive fish kills due to the excessive amount of weeds on the pond preventing oxygen to get in for the fish. So my concern is that every time that you guys make an improvement on your water management system, it seems to negatively affect the quality of the water that we're coming down here. And I would like to hope that maybe sometime that might be addressed so that the property and the ponds, these retention ponds, don't continue on a downward slide to becoming cesspools and dangers to family and people who are in the area, because the water is far from clean, and make no mistake about it. It has made a huge change in the quality of the water going down there. So I just wanted to make a point that they're making it sound like it's drinking water, but believe me, it's far from drinking water that's going down there.
Thanks, Blaze.
Thank you.
I think, is it Tesha Fegan or Tesla Fegan? Did I?
She said she'd pass.
She did, oh, she's behind the beam.
She is behind.
My
Yep.
infamous beam where I lose sight of people. All right, John Carrick.
My name is John Carrig, 1155 Webster Road. I've been a professional land surveyor working for a survey and engineering company for over 40, 50 years. So I do understand the need to take care of some of these problems. I don't particularly in favor of having the people that are not on a drainage district to have them become in a drainage district. I've been in my home for over 50 years and have not needed any help. I've taken care of most of the things myself. I do understand, though, that I understand that for a long time, ever since the 30s, I know water goes downhill. It's either going downhill too fast or too slow. And that's one of the problems we're having. So I'm not in favor of forcing people to get on this $40 a unit thing. One of the things I want to ask is, what are some of these requirements DEC is making you do that we didn't do before? I mean, for 50, 70 years, things have been going halfway decent, but a lot of the problems are, do we have enough equipment to take care of some of these things? That open up the small culverts that need to be addressed when they're blocking things? Do we have backhoes to clean ditches out? Are we equipped with that? Because the problem is, if the water gets down too fast, right to Mill Creek, that's a problem too. So retention pond should fix that problem. Like this last gentleman said, when you wash your car in the driveway and it goes down to the storm sewer too quickly, it got soap suds in there. Wash the car in the grass. Let the grass absorb that in the sunlight. So, but I'm not in favor of the $40 a unit thing. I know you need money, but how much? You got about $500,000 in the kitty every year to clean these things out. What's the problem? Is it not enough money? I guess that's probably the answer.
Thank you, John.
But I'm not in favor of the $40 for everybody.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I actually wanted to clap too, because he said, water's going downhill. Never a truer statement made. Andre Tiaupa? Close? Andre Sayupa? Okay. Let's see, Pat. Well, Judge Coratory. David.
Probably you answered all the questions that I really had on your cheat sheet, so I made some more copies if anybody wanted to get some. Pass them out, or there's a front and a back to it, so.
Thank you, David.
You want to pass them out. So, that realistically answered the questions that I had. David Coratory, 1477 Ridge Road. I'm in a 100-year-old house. You're absolutely right. We back up to a drainage ditch that takes water from Krieger Road on out, and I owe the $40.
Has anybody ever been before Judge Coratory? I mean, we won't hold any judgment against you, right? All right? One of the most class individuals you'll ever meet in your life. And funny as can be, to tell you the truth. I feel bad for Paul Schenk, who's got to follow that.
public speaking. Paul Schenk, 641 Vosburg Road. I have a pond, same issues that Mr. Midnight had with road drainage. Vosburg Road is a very steep hill. There's 4 to 5 catch basins, storm catch basins on the hill. I'm sure Pat's familiar with Vosburg Road, plowing it and whatnot. My grandmother signed easements for those drains to dump onto our property. They've caused some problems with the erosion over the years, but they've pretty much been corrected. Right now, there is an area that's washing out, but I was gonna, just call you guys for that. But I don't think there's anything, or I was wondering if there's anything could be done with all that road water. That's probably a foolish question, other than it going into my pond. A lot of water comes down that hill. I know the salt. One year, Joe Herbst, who I know personally, it was one year 10, 15 years ago, there was something used in the salt. I never knew what it was exactly. I lost my whole pond, all the bass. I had a good bass population. I lost it all. And then I've had the same algae problems as Mr. Midnight. I don't believe in chemicals to control that. I did control it with about 1,000 goldfish that I have to feed every day. But I guess my main question is if anything could be done with all that runoff, but I don't think so.
Thanks, Paul. Jerry Grunman? You sure? Howard Krug. Darn it!
My wife, I should get to the podium first. My wife came here 2 years ago and warned you guys that if you build that 5-track housing on Van Alstyne Park, it was going to cause water problems. Nobody listened to anybody, and I don't think they did a very good job because the company that built the 5 houses, there's only 3 on the 5. It's at Van Alstyne and Shoemaker. I'm representing 821 Shoemaker, and then I own the property on Notre Dame, that backs up to Notre Dame Drive called 815 Shoemaker. I rent that out. We said something about there being a drainage problem. So they said, no, we're going to build a retention pond. They build a retention pond in front. It caused such a bad smell that the people who were living in the first house next to Van Alstyne actually had it filled in themselves. And then they went out there and tried to build another culvert to try to get that in. So I am not, how do I put this kindly? I am not impressed with the drainage situation and the drainage project that's going on. I also noticed at the bottom of the page, and very details matter, okay? And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I think it says you get $125,000 in the highway department for special or drainage-specific jobs. What does drainage-specific jobs mean? Okay, case in point. I back up on 821. I own an acre of land, 821, 815. I'm not rich by any means. I live in about 1,500 or 1,600 square foot house. But I love land. I'm an old farm boy. My land backs up into Chateau Lane, which is the one track that was built on Clem Road. Ever since that track of housing has been built, I have
3 to 4 inches. I have ducks that come every year from March, all April, May, June, and it's about July before I can mow the last half of my lawn. There's a ditch that has never been cleaned out. I asked the town last year about possibly digging a French drain and coming into the town. I was told that it will cost me $7,000 to tap into the sewer line and to have this drainage built. So if I pay $40 every year, let's say that's probably going to go up. Everything goes up in life. Let's not kid ourselves. I would like to know what a projected cost is. If it starts at $40, is there going to be a 1 or 2%? Can you guarantee that? Because if you're saying right now that we have to pay $40 and then the following year, oh, we found some other problems, so now you need to pay $60. And the following year you pay $75. What kind of guarantee is there built into this drainage problem? And again, drainage specific jobs. I have one on 821 Shoemaker Road. I'm actually digging that ditch out myself with a wheelbarrow in my spare time. It's taken me a little while to do that, but I'm trying to get rid of the drainage problem that I've got in my backyard and also now in 815, and it's kind of soppy halfway up, like over a half acre into my yard, and it's just gotten worse with the Van Alstyne track housing, even though they're down probably a quarter of a mile. It's still getting worse every year, even though there's a storm sewer drain there. And sometimes there's some water sitting on Shoemaker Road, which there never was before. And there's actual water that sits on Shoemaker Road when you not in the part that goes down to Whiting where that ditch is. I understand there's some water there because of that. I'm talking about on the actual Shoemaker Road, there is now water there. And so, yeah, those are my two questions. And also, I did have one more. And so if it's based on a...
He's wearing a Bills thing, so he's at 5 minutes and 42 seconds. I'm letting you go over 5 because I'm a Bills fan.
I'm sorry. I'm a teacher, so I talk too much. My kids tell me I do. I apologize. One last question. If the house is if it's a 3,500 square foot house and I live in a 1,600 square foot house, is that going to be adjusted? Or is it just one house equals one unit? That's my last question. I apologize.
You don't have to apologize at all. If you were wearing a Rams jersey, I would have kicked you off in 2 minutes. Cindy and Joe Wall.
Cindy Wall, 540 Walmont Drive. Most of my questions got answered, but I'm finding the frustration with a lot of pond owners in Webster. So my question is, if the runoff from approved properties is the result of duckweed and milfoil and all of that coming onto our ponds, is there anything in place for the town to help us eradicate any of that?
And your question is about a privately owned pond?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Wall? What? He's got a lot of nerve. Oh boy. Nick Stanko? You don't have to be sorry. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to say anything? Okay. All right. Francis Gautier? Did I get that correctly? Hey.
62 Webster Road, and we have gotten flooded in our driveway. The water came up to the tires of our car. And we had to get a new furnace, hot water tank. I've lost 2 dryers, 2 washers, everything. We've had people come in, tear everything down because there was siding on it. We built a tract of homes, and they put a pond next to us. The pond is like green all the way through, thick. And now it's eroding, and the water is right to the top of our property. So if any more water goes in there, we'll definitely get flooded. And then we have a creek, man-made creek, that comes around on one side, its front, goes down and goes under the road. We get a lot of debris. We'll get logs like this big coming down, blocking the culverts and whatever. I call up to have them cleaned, but lately when they come and clean them, they take the logs away, but they just put them on the side of the property near the street. They don't take it away. And we got flooded quite a bit, twice. We've got flooded by the pond, we've got flooded by the creek. Water comes down the road, and we're surrounded by water. And comes around the side, comes all over. We get everything down there, golf balls, everything you can think of, and it clogs the culvert. So I call, and it takes them a while, but they have recently done it, but in the past they haven't. They just ignored us at all. My husband's disabled, and the one superintendent said, "Well, we have such a problem here. Water is terrible." And he said, "Why'd you buy this house?" That was his question. I was very upset with that. I'm very upset with the whole thing, the whole water situation, because we're surrounded. We got water on this side, front, and the back. We're like an island, our house, surrounded by water, and it's pretty bad. I guess that's it.
Thanks, Francis. Steve Beamish. I'm good. You sure? Yeah. Okay. Well, that is the 29 people that signed in. I wanted to say, is she telling the truth?
She was behind. She's not a girlfriend.
You know what? We're gonna go right ahead. We're gonna need, up on the podium, we'll need name and address, and that will be it, and then we're getting into the answering of the questions.
Diane Pickett, 854 Hard Road, right down the road from here. Hooked up with this creek that runs right behind, down beside the library. In fact, my neighbor and I, way back, I've been here since '66, helped get that ditch opened up. We had petitions signed to have it opened. My question is, do you allow people to stop you once you start clearing a creek? Can I tell you that I've been maintaining the creek, having people come in and do it myself, because I don't want anybody moving the rocks that I placed on the sides of the creek? Question.
I got you.
Okay.
All right. We have 24 questions. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 25 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of them, half of them are specific to the person's property. So, those ones we are not going to answer because we will have that person, and these people are Debbie Lester, Larry Petrelli, Peter Lloyd, Joanne Batzel, Vic Anashewitz, John Baldwin, John Glavich, Blaze Midnight, Paul Schenk, Howard Krug, and Francis Gaudier. Their questions and comments were essentially about their property. And therefore, I will make sure that the appropriate engineering, highway department, supervisor's office we will look into your situation, we'll be in communication with you to see what the situation is on your specific property. Now, the other 13 questions were what I would consider to be the general questions that would be, oh, you're welcome. You're not being rude at all. You got to get home and see that game, and so do we all. So, question 1, and it came up a couple of times. We started right out with Walter, but it was asked in a derivation also by Blaze Midnight, which is, what is the water? Is this coming from the sky, or is it coming from your home? What is the water that goes in? And Blaze explained like soapy water and all that stuff. So, Pat, Mary, what kind of liquid water, whatever, is supposed to go into our drainage system if people aren't breaking the law?
So it's basically the stormwater and groundwater. So your sump pump in your house that's just taking on groundwater could be pumped into the stormwater system, and then all of the surface runoff from the rainstorms.
Yeah, the rainstorms from the sky. So it's not sewer. Tom mentioned that the sewer, the stuff that goes out of your showers and your toilets and all that type of stuff, that is a separate system. I actually had a resolution earlier tonight for the treatment plant that deals with that. When it was mentioned in the earlier presentation that one of the 6 characteristics had to do with effluent discharges, it's the policing. And if we become aware of a cross-contamination between those systems, we need to go out and remedy it. That is the only portion of the stormwater program that happens, is to try to, wherever we can, make sure that those aren't happening. And when we do find a cross-contamination where there's sewer, something going from someone's toilet into these bodies, to remedy it, to stop it, to send it somewhere else. That's the portion of the stormwater program that has to do with sewers. The rest of it is rain from the sky that is in these systems, these drainage ways.
Pat, and I know that Josh is not here tonight, our Director of Community Development, who oversees code compliance. I want to make...
He's behind the post, you can't see.
Get the heck out of here. Josh, I am going to say that if anybody sees a neighbor pouring oil into their sewer or whatever, or all that stuff that Blaze mentioned, you call us. Because that's illegal, that's unsanitary. I could go on and on. Call us. Thank you. Help us.
You could touch on that really quick, Tom, because I had some thoughts on that as that was coming up. We can't control a lot of that stuff, what people are putting on their lawns, whether only to a certain extent. The education piece of the MS4 program will put out there that's very bad. Not to do that, not to dump paint. That's another one I see a lot. People want to put paint down there. We can't control that. However, we talk about the stormwater ponds that are put in place that catch entire neighborhoods. Even though things aren't the way they were maybe 40, 50 years ago, those ponds are catching some. And I feel very confident saying that the situations that were described about the privately owned ponds would be worse if some of these ponds weren't in place. I think the factor that contributes to the worsening of those conditions in the private ponds is the population growth. That we have that many more people. If you look at how many people were here in, say, 1984, in the 30,000s, and now we're at 46,000 people. There's just that many more homes, that many more people washing their cars, that many more people maybe violating things in a way by dumping things down those drains. The quantity has increased so much that even though these ponds are doing some, they're obviously not doing enough based on what was happening here tonight. And that's why a lot of these funds will go toward trying to improve that and trying to either through education or policing, if we can get residents that call in when they see people putting stuff in this system that isn't supposed to go in it, which is anything that Mary just described with sump pumps or coming from the sky, let us know, and we will try to work on that. That is what these funds are for, is to try to improve those situations.
The next question is multifamily. If it's a single family house versus a 2-family house, 3-family, 4-family, and I'm going to leave it at that because apartment complexes are very different. I think that gets more into, what do you call it, the footage, the 3,500. But what is the answer on a 1-family versus a 2-family house?
So there's different ways to assess properties. So as long as it's a residentially assessed property, it would be a single unit.
Thank you.
For the parcel itself. Correct.
Okay. Is that?
Do you want to
that
elaborate
Kara?
about Donna or no?
Kara? Is that Kara?
Yeah.
Kara, offline, I need to understand what you own, because you keep saying building. I have this feel there's an apartment complex out there. Okay, apartment complex is a different kettle of fish. So I'm gonna put you down also as somebody that we need to be talking to offline about the specificity of either your property ownership or the people you're here asking about. So thank you. But thank you, 1, 2-family, 3-family residential is 1 unit. Next question. I think I know the answer to this. You live in the town of Webster. If your drainage, if you're saying goes into Ontario, New York, Wayne County, you live in the town of Webster, I think you pay the town of Webster drainage district. That was asked by a gentleman, Michael Kime, on 225 County Line Road, in the town of Webster, correct? Okay. You're on the Webster side. You pay Webster taxes? Okay. I think I can answer that one effectively, that you're in Webster. Yep.
But we're back to the fact that everyone travels the Webster roads and benefits from the drainage that's throughout the town.
The next question is a twofold one. So it's really, you got the projected cost of this the next 10 years. You know, Paul, unfortunately, I think you probably don't have this. What has been the cost of this trending in the last 10 years?
Drainage really has not increased tremendously. I think you probably can expect a 2 or 3% increase. It's based on over 15,000 units, so for every dollar it goes up, raises $15,000.
Right. And, you know, the stock market, past performance doesn't dictate future, what's going to happen?
No.
I think Blaze asked about a guarantee. I'll tell you something, this has been a frustrating thing to me about the fiscal realities of a municipal budget. It's based on 1 year. A board comes in and does a budget for 1 year. I ran a business for almost 30 years. That to me is like, well, what about a 5-year plan and this and that? That's not how municipal government works. What I do know is the preliminary budget for 2023 was adopted last week at $40 a unit, down from $43 a unit last year, and that's because it is projected in that preliminary budget that we will expand the consolidated district to go to 100% of the homes from the 78%. Do I envision that it'll go up to $100 a unit instead of $40 this year to next year? No. Because I think you would get into special projects at that point, Pat, and that might be specific to one area where the homeowners galvanize together, come to the town and say, we want to do this in our neighborhood, and that might be a special assessment on their property. But they would have say in that. They're the ones that would probably need to approach us about that. So I don't foresee it going up exponentially, and I certainly don't see any possibility the way the municipal government is set up for a guarantee that we're 4 years from now going to be a completely different town board. We can't do that. The town board at that time needs to make decisions on that fiscal budget. The next question, 4 Mile Creek. It was a generic question. Who inspects 4 Mile Creek?
So with the inspection piece, we do go out and do our own inspections, but we do rely heavily on resident input if you see a blockage and whatnot, so we attack those. This kind of ties into the financial part. There's probably a better question for it in the way, but there was sort of some question about, this looks like you have about $500,000 right now. You know, how do you spend that? A lot of the issues and concerns that were brought up about the common drainage ways is unfortunately because we're understaffed to do this. So we do perform these things, but currently we are behind. So if you call right now and you have a drainage issue with a common thing in your backyard, we're over a year out. So if you call right now, we have a year's worth of work before we can get there. To me, now in charge of managing the department, that's not great. That's not great for the residents for us to tell them, oh, you have a blocked ditch. Well, unless it's actually flooding your house, we'll be here in a year. So it sounds like a lot of money, but across a 35 square mile town with 46,000 residents and hundreds of miles of these drainage ways, it doesn't go as far as you think. So we are responsible for inspecting these drainage ways. We rarely have time to actually walk them in their totality, and anything more than a couple year basis currently. So that's part of this adjustment to make sure everybody's contributing to these things, and the increase in funds is to try to do more of what we're doing, and so that we don't have to tell people it's over a year out before we can come deal with the issue on the common drainage way that's near your house.
Thank you, and actually, geez, Pat, I looked at these are kind of the same questions. What does drainage specific job mean? And then there's another question I wrote down, qualification for a drainage problem. They're kind of one and the same question.
Yeah, I could try to sum it up. So
Right.
at the town, because it is for the overarching thing, a drainage related project would be something that affects the flow of drainage from one point to another that affects multiple residents. If you have a sinking hole in your backyard and it fills up with water, it's not right for us to spend taxpayer dollars to come and fix someone's yard. But if that connects to a drainage way that carries down to the creek, and that drainage way that maybe takes 10 or 15 houses in, if something can be done with that to improve it, that will improve your situation, then we will improve that drainage way. But we don't go on private property to do that. So things that are currently under easement, we will maintain. If there's an issue, you let us know. We will unfortunately schedule the work depending on the severity and come and do it. And if there's something that can be done, we will. That's the other part that I hear here, some of the concerns about pitch and where things can go. Unfortunately, there are limitations. If something's flat, I can't make it drain any better than it is. So sometimes it's difficult to find a point to start to improve the drainage in order to affect the point of concern. Sometimes there are just physical limitations. We find it a lot up by the lake where it's very, very flat, that sometimes you have to go hundreds or thousands of feet to make even the smallest difference in how somebody's area drains to a common drainage way. So what is a drainage project? Something that has to do with the rainwater runoff, and how it affects how water sits in an area. If you have a wetland, an area that's always been wet, we can't come in and drain it for you. That gets into the intermunicipal stuff with the DEC and different things. Some things are going to stay the way they are. But if there is improvement that can be made, and there isn't always, it's always difficult. There could be physical limitations that don't allow it. We will come and assess it and make it a project, whether it's one that has to be out. If it's very large, Tom said we may have to do some planning, look into grants, different things to coordinate with you on getting it addressed. If it's as small as cleaning out a ditch, it can go into our maintenance cycle, and we'll address it when we have the staff and manpower to get there in our normal cycle, which is dealt with generally as calls come in, but sometimes based on severity.
And I'm glad you touched on that, Pat, is that it is tough to look at being a year out, but when you're understaffed and you don't have the resources, that's the reality. We're hoping to start to alleviate that problem and start to get that where we're caught up to these projects. You kind of answered this question, because the question of who determines a drainage issue, I always, in the almost 3 years I've been the supervisor, a lot of times, Pat, we find out about them from people calling in.
It's our number one resource. Like I said, it's a huge, huge town. We can't police and walk all of it 100% of the time as often as we would like to try to be proactive about these things. But as we get these funds in and we're able to staff appropriately, it will improve. That doesn't mean everybody's issue is solved. So who makes the decision? Currently, the highway department is in charge of the maintenance. So our staff that currently has, I don't know about currently, but when I took over, there's been some retirements, almost 500 years collectively of experience with drainage and highway work across our 35 to 40 people. And I rely heavily on their knowledge, in addition to my background in engineering and different stuff, to come out and assess these situations. So the highway department would assess each individual situation on its own, and based on what we find there, give you potential avenues for what could be done, and unfortunately sometimes what cannot. So it would be the highway department that makes those determinations.
And it kind of ties into one of the questions here about I think it actually was your question, the last one. Can a citizen say to the highway department drainage, stop working on that, I've got stones there, this and that? Part of determining a drainage issue that the highway department, the drainage part of it handles is it in an easement that the town manages?
Correct.
So
So
if your question, and I still consider that a general question, can a citizen say when you guys come in, because you're unblocking in a stream that's in an easement of the towns on someone's property, can the citizen stop you from doing that?
Give you the quick answer and let me explain. The answer is no. So if the property is under easement, if there's a drainage issue with it in some way, you cannot stop us from coming in and alleviating that drainage issue. Now, if the area is maintained and there is not a drainage issue, we are not likely to be there. As I just said, we are not able to get to all of the places that we would like to get to begin with. So we're probably not going to come and bother an area that doesn't have an issue. The only caveat I'll give to that is if there is something in the area and this segment is the access to it, we may have to travel through it to get there, and then it could be challenging for certain things to not be disrupted at all. So that's the issue with the easement. If we have drainage easement over it, we do have the right to come in and deal with drainage-related issues, which is literally the flow of water. It's not a lot of other issues that may come up in that area. When that's easement, it is your property, but with the easement gives us the right to go on there to deal with drainage-related issues, sometimes maintenance, other times direct issues.
And Pat, it's interesting when I said that the 12 people who asked very specific questions about their property or abutting properties, what I've seen you do in conjunction with like Josh, who is behind there, you said?
He's back.
Okay. The first triage thing when someone calls in is the GIS look at the map of their property, basically the survey of the property, and see what easements are there, county, town, whatever, drainage, and that kind of guides you on what can or can't be done on that property. Is that correct?
That's correct, right? So if you already have easement over it, it's easiest for us to go do work in there. And then the flip side of that is we are not allowed to do work on private property.
Right.
So if you do have a segment that benefits multiple residents, it's a common drainage way, we would actually have to go through the process of taking easement over it in order for us to maintain it and work on it long term.
Right. It's a good segue into a question that came up about private ponds. I know we have over 200 town ponds or retention ponds, but there are private ponds in town. I think the question was if runoff from an approved, planning board approved, whatever subdivision is causing issues on a private pond. I think I know the answer that one, we don't maintain private ponds.
Do you want to touch on what ponds that are going in developments are intended to do, whether related to discharge?
Sure. So when the stormwater pond is constructed for a site, the purpose of it is to slow the discharge to either equal to or less than the discharge rate prior to development. So if there's impervious areas such as pavement, roofs, things of that nature that speed up the water discharge across the site, the stormwater pond is supposed to collect it and slow it down so that the actual water leaving that large parcel that just got segmented into multiple parcels isn't receiving the water any quicker than it did before. So that's the intention. So that's why the highway department has to monitor the ponds and make sure that they don't get filled with sediment, because if the volume decreases, then the water will leave the pond quicker. And so that's why we have to maintain them and make sure that they're functioning properly.
That kind of ties into what I mentioned earlier. So as long as they're holding the capacity they should and releasing slowly, you should see no change downstream. Now, people putting things in those streams, other alterations, if for some reason the water's going somewhere it didn't go to before, I can't speak for the past, unfortunately, but I know with the program we have now, we're looking at that as heavily as we need to. The regulations for the pond are not dictated by us. They're dictated by the DEC. There's rules and regulations about how those ponds are designed and what they're intended to do. So we don't create those ourselves. We basically are checking for conformance with them. Every situation is unique also, so I don't want to generalize this too much. If you have a specific question about your location, there can be things that have been adjusted or done over the years that may have affected it, but in general, the general concept of the stormwater ponds in relation to existing ponds should be that there isn't an increase in speed inflow from them. When it comes to the pollutants, the algae, the different things like that, the pond is taking some of it out, but with, say there's 50 houses on it, there may still be some stuff getting through. Because it's retaining it, releasing it slowly, like I said, I'm confident to say that there's less than there would be if 50 houses were put in and there was no pond put there. I think they would get there faster and in a much more potent way.
We got 3 left. This one's, I think, a pretty easy one. The question was, if I have a 1,600 square foot house, do I get paid less than someone with a 3,200 square foot house? That answer is no. It is a flat fee. Doesn't really matter if you got a 2-acre lot with a house on it, a half-acre lot with a house on it, if your single-family house is whatever square feet. 2 to go. Do we have equipment to manage drainage?
Yes. I could list it off. If you look in the budget, you'll see a very big line. But yeah, we self-perform with our staff and our equipment, all of the drainage type things you see. I will touch on this one a little bit because there's several people, and this is a very, very common issue that comes into our office because we're the highway department, so we're in charge of all highways, except the ones dictated by the county and state. There's a list on our website of which roads those are, but roads like Schlegel Road, Basket Road, County Line Road, Ridge Road is a state road. If it's an actual pipe or piece of infrastructure connected to that road, that is dictated by the county. We coordinate very closely with them because these other common drainage ways that come through the town sometimes pass through these areas. So we're very in touch with what they do. They coordinate with us on all of it. But when it comes to the actual specifics of what's done and what's not done within their right-of-way, we actually aren't the final decision. Like I said, they're very good about coordinating with us, but some of the concerns about pipes going in that were different and whatnot, we wouldn't be able to make that final decision. We would only be able to provide them input on how we felt it impacted the drainage on either side of it if it's within the town of Webster. So there was a lot of stuff about roads that are actually county or state regulated.
And last but not least, what are some of these additional requirements the DEC and other regulatory agencies are mandating on a municipality compared to years ago?
Yeah, so there's a lot more onus on the municipality to do more inspections. So all the catch basins in town are supposed to be on a 5-year rotating program of getting inspections and having write-ups done on them. There's about 4,500 in town, so that's 900 a year that we're supposed to be inspecting. There's also a more training and things of that nature that we're supposed to put our staff through. There's a lot more record keeping, and the construction and development that's in town, the town's responsible for doing more frequent inspections on those to make sure that they're being compliant with the regulations. So just a lot more manpower is needed from the town in both site work and documenting back in the office, so this would help alleviate some of the pressures on the town by giving us those resources of people to be able to hire for those things.
When was the MS4 program actually created? Because there's some dates mentioned back 70s and 80s, but when the onus
I
was
believe
put
it
on
was
the town.
2003.
Yeah, so it's a pretty new set of regulations that now, and this is the most interesting part, and we talk about a fixed annual budget with caps and different things. There was no funding given with those requirements. When those responsibilities were turned over to the town, there is no funding stream that came with it. So it's just important to understand as this stuff increases in cost.
Thank you. And one thing, like I said earlier, there's 12 or 13 that have specific questions about their property. You know, I know this. I've seen how Pat and Josh and Mary and, you know, our philosophy is we are going to look into your situation, GIS, this and that. We're going to give you the facts. Sometimes, you know, those facts are tough. Because if you're on a state road and that's a state easement, and, we'll try to advocate to the State Department of Transportation or whatever, but if it's their call on a county road or whatever, we lose some authority on doing stuff on that. But I promise you this, you'll get the facts about your situation. So with that being said, town board members, any comments, questions? I am going to close the public hearing. And Dolly, what do we have? Okay. Do the town board members have any comments or questions?
Nope.
Okay. Then I am going, that's not it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I am going to make a motion in order of the Webster Town Board establishing an extension to the Consolidated Drainage District Number 1 of the town of Webster. Aye.
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 I think we can,
Yeah, let them.
let's clear this out before we start anymore.
I think, Donna, I'm sorry. All right, the last item of tonight's workshop, so I can find my agenda.
Can I put something on the record very, very briefly?
Sure.
I want to thank, I know Josh is here, he's talking, and Mary's here, and Pat's here, but I really want to, I'm very impressed with this map. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. So, anyway, I want that on the record. They've done a yeoman's job in preparing this map, and,
Can I interrupt for a minute? We've got a lot of conversation
Okay,
going on in the room.
yeah.
Me too.
Hey, Rich, and I appreciate, we are still in the middle of a meeting. Thank you. Good seeing you. All right. Sorry about that.
no, so I just wanted to note, because I've been around a while, and this is, anyway, I want to congratulate you and Mary and whoever else helped you put this together. It's a lot of work, did a great job, and also in getting those letters out. I realized it was a lot of work. It's all behind the scenes, nobody realizes that the fact you got to turn out like this indicates it. So, great job for everybody that had to do with this. So.
Yes, thank you all.
Right, well, we had it at 6:30, so we're 45 minutes off, actually, based on the attendance, not too bad. Pat, thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Nicely done,
Thank you so much.
nicely done. Our last item is a presentation discussion by the Town of Webster Assessor, Donna Komar, to consider taking up a resolution to schedule a public hearing regarding a local option to adjust income limits for senior citizen exemption. Actually, there's two things you're presenting tonight, correct, Donna? Because the other presentation... Okay, the other presentation is consider taking up a resolution to schedule a public hearing regarding local option to adjust income limits for disabled persons and limited income exemption. I'll hand the baton to you, Donna.
I gotta call it up. Right. Okay. Is there a way to find myself here?
I got my movie critic down here.
So Karen, do I just run it from here? I got the control and the lever.
Keep that 15 minutes shorter.
I got complete control over this, right?
Okay.
All right.
Good answers from Pat, though.
Well, thank you all for coming. That's going to be a hard act to follow.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
This is not as nearly interesting as what you've just been through, but tonight what I wanted to do is talk to you about two bills that have been passed, two bills that have been passed, which concern the limited income senior citizen exemption and the disabled persons with limited income. And that has been signed into law, so you now have an opportunity to adjust those income scales for those two exemptions if you so choose. There's nothing requiring you to do that. So tonight what I wanted to do is begin with just a small highlight summary background of what those two programs are, not only for you but for the viewers at home and online. There's two programs. I'm going to refer to them by the section of law. This is the 467, which is the limited income senior citizen exemption. It is not the STAR program, but it is related to a person's residence, age, and their income. It's the original senior citizens exemption. It's applicable to their primary residence only, and it is based on age and income. So each owner must be 65 or over by December 31st of the year that they're making the application, and if the owners are married or siblings as defined by law, then only one person must be age eligible. This is by way of background for people who may not be familiar with these programs. It's also based on income, and there's various levels of discounts that are based on what we determine the household income to be. There's a sliding scale for that, which we're going to get into in depth. So that's the limited income senior citizen program. The disabled persons with limited income is very similar in that it's based on their primary residence only. But instead of age, this program is based on the criteria that the person making the application has a physical or mental disability that affects one or more of their major life activities. And it's also based on income. And they must be receiving Social Security, disability insurance, or some type of other disability pension or disability program. And again, it's based on the level of need, and there's a sliding scale. That's how they differ. And how they are similar is that the applications are renewable each year. They are applying to our office, and we take those applications and review their income according to those statutes that I referred to, not any income from the IRS or the Department of Taxation and Finance. We're not using income tax law, but we're using the real property tax law that defines that income. And then depending on the income and the limits that are set by the taxing jurisdictions, the discounts may be applicable to the town, the school, the county, and or the village. And those limits are subject to change from time to time. That is why we are here. So that's my background. Any questions on that so far? Okay. I want to give you some statistics currently about the two programs. When I'm quoting these statistics to you, I'm sitting before the Town of Webster Town Board, and so these come from the town perspective. I can tell you that altogether we take in 624 approved applicants last year for the low-income senior citizen exemption to represent all the jurisdictions. Of those, 408 were approved for some level of town benefits. The aggregate assessment that is not paying a tax based on their eligibility for this program is $18,705,046 for town purposes. That's $101,568 in tax savings to those applicants. But as you know, that tax isn't going to go unpaid. It'll be paid by the remainder of the tax base. As far as the disabled persons with limited income, I have 42 applications on the roll for 2022. 27 of them are receiving some level of benefit for a town discount. That's $1,237,930 in assessed value, aggregate to that group of 27 applications. Or using the town's rate for outside the village for just a general purpose, $6,722 in tax savings to those individuals, which then are being paid by the rest of the group. So for tonight, our opportunity and our objective is to have a discussion to see if whether or not you wish to entertain any changes to the level of income. the local laws allow you to set the income limit at the 50% benefit, and then the scale is just calculated from there on up. You can set that 50% benefit at the income of $3,000, as low as $3,000, but not any lower. And right now, the new legislation allows the town board to set that 50% benchmark at $50,000. We are presently at $26,000, and the state maximum before this adjustment was at $29,000. The beauty is that each taxing jurisdiction gets to set this for their own residents, what is applicable to their own demographics. So it is rumored that the county has drafted and will be entertaining discussion at the full $50,000 limit. I haven't heard anything about any other municipalities in our jurisdiction or around as to where they're going with this discussion. So it's the town board who has the authority to decide the appropriate level. And to help you do that, I've gathered a few statistics from the Census Bureau for you. As of July 1st of 2021, the town of Webster population is 45,324 estimated off of the 2020 census. Of those people, 21% are over the age of 65. 7.3% are disabled under the age of 65. And 71.8% of any age is in an owner-occupied house. The median household income is $76,373, and they had a footnote that said that includes all people over the age of 15. So it actually might be a low reporting if you're looking at people who are, still in high school getting their first job. They're not going to have that highest level of income. So that might be underreported for our purposes of the demographics that you'll be looking at this evening. The per capita income is $40,869, and our poverty level is at 5%. So these are the statistics, but they're not all tied to homeowners. The programs that we administer are going to be tied to homeowners. Here I've shown you a side-by-side comparison to our current schedule. So you can see on the left-hand side what we adopted in 2010 is the last time you revisited the income scale. The maximum for the 50% mark, and the percentages run down the center of the screen. The maximum for the 50% mark was set at $26,000 or less at that time. And then it goes up by incremental stages, which are defined by the statute, all the way up to $34,400, which would give a person a discount for town purposes at 5%. So if somebody's income is in between the two, you see we would just apply this level, and then we would apply that against the town line of their school tax responsibility, their town tax responsibility. The new state mandate, or maximum option, is allowable at setting that 50% benchmark at $50,000. So that's almost a doubling. And you can see that would put the 5% benefit level at an income level of less than $58,400. That's a big jump. That's a very big jump, and you've just seen the demographics of where our population sits as far as their income. You have to take all of this in and decide if you want to change your schedule and what level you would like to set it at. But you can pick any number between $3,000 and $50,000. You're presently at $26,000, and the rest of the scale then would be calculated off of that number. I think that there's two reasons for the large jump in the change. I can think of three now. One is inflation. Another is that it's been 13 years since there's been an opportunity to adjust this. The state maximum of $29,000 has been in place for the last 13 years. So there's those, and then I understand that the downstate population has always talked about how the one income scale that's attributable to the entire state is not applicable to their level of poverty. So they already have been at the 50,000. This gives the rest of the state the opportunity to join them at the 50,000 mark. A change in the income level will increase the number of new applicants. Because if I go back one here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. The top end of your scale right now is at 34,400. If you go to the full maximum for the state, everybody will receive a 50% mark, and then there's a lot of people who we've never seen before that would be applying. So, again, the change in the income level will definitely increase the number of new applicants. It will raise the benefits of all existing applicants, and increase their percentage discount. There is no way for us to predict the taxable value change that you would be shifting to the rest of the taxpayers. And it will not affect any existing applications. The decision that you would be making would have to first go forward into a public hearing, and all of the bills for the assessment roll year have already been set and established by last year's applications. So it will take effect after March 1st, 2023. One of the reasons that I'm here early is because, thankfully, the legislature has put this out early enough for us to entertain it in advance of us taking our applications. But we're about ready to mail out our renewal applications, and we have to notify the public as to what those levels would be. And of course, we would want to advertise if you change that and give people ample opportunity to come in and take advantage of the new levels that you would be approving if you chose to change that. A public hearing is required for each of the exemptions, although I've summarized them in one conversation for you today, but only if you're going to adjust the incomes. Most municipalities set the disabled with limited income scale at about the same level, if not identical, to their senior citizen scale. And it would be required to have 2 public hearings, one for each one, because each statute does require a public hearing for those individual demographics. So you have separate and distinct laws, you have separate and distinct local laws, and that would require separate and distinct public hearings. And then I just want to leave this slide up there for anybody watching at home who's looking for some more information on exemptions. This is our page on how you could find that information, to find the applications, the instructions, the descriptions, and more information about this summary that I've given today. And there's our phone numbers. So I will leave that up and remind people that if they are concerned about applying for an exemption for the first time, that application deadline would be March 1st. That's the end of my summary for you. Can I answer any questions?
Does this affect veterans or active militaries?
No, that's a different program, and that's not based on income.
We just changed that recently, didn't we? To include?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, a Cold War veteran.
Yes,
exactly.
yes,
We
the
made it
town
more
just added
inclusive.
the benefits for the Cold War.
Yep.
And then the state just changed the definition of the dates for the alternative. So right after you approved that, we moved a bunch of people from the Cold War into the alternative veterans because of that change of date. So, 2 years in a row with some very significant changes in our exemption program, which are usually quite steady from year to year. So it's been an exciting time.
I bet you're a good teacher, Donna, because this was a great presentation. It really does. I mean, I know
Thank
you
you.
teach at the state level, right?
I do. I'll be going to the fall conference. I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to teach assessors there all about the IRA income portion
Nice.
for these exemptions. Yes.
I don't want to jump ahead of anybody's questions, but so January 24 tax bills is the first this would really be reflected.
September 23 would be the first one that would be
Oh,
affected, not by your decision, but by this law. Yes.
Right. But
Thinking
the
as an
school,
assessor.
they got to go and make their own decision on it. Just like you said, the county, you've heard rumblings, they're talking about going to the 50%.
Yes,
That's their decision.
correct.
And the school, if they want it they'd have to make a decision pretty soon if they wanted on the September 23
Yes.
roll.
Right, so from your perspective, your decision will first affect the January 2024 tax bills. Yes.
You said, but the reason you're bringing it to us now is because you got to mail out to a lot of the, well, to all the people that already have it about the next
Right.
time they should be applying for this.
Yes.
You'd like to have something about what it's going to be next time.
We're already getting questions. People are asking us all year long about the applications. As they're turning 65, they're aware of certain programs. They come in, they ask us for the details. And right now, we cannot answer the question as to what the income limit is. And we cannot advise them whether they should make the application or not make the application. So we're pretty much just asking people to wait and let this settle because there is plenty of time. They can give us an application if they like, but we cannot do anything but add it up, because we don't know whether we're going to be approving them or denying them until all of the taxing jurisdictions that affect the assessment roll, and there's 5 levels that affect our assessment roll, 2 school districts, a county, the town, and the village.
Right.
So until they've all answered us, we can't process those applications. We'll take them in, they're gonna set aside until we can know how to respond to them.
If I understand that correctly, so if the town says, man, we got to run and get to the end answer on this and what we're going to do, we may run quick to get to the end answer, but you're still in a holding pattern for months.
Well, I'm in the holding pattern until all 5 jurisdictions have decided whether or not they will be making a change and what the change would be. Because each application will be looked at for its particular location. We do have 2 school districts. You sometimes may forget, we have 2 school districts in the town of Webster. So I'm looking for 2 school boards to decide.
Sure.
Wayne Central as well as Webster Central.
So what's the drop dead date for the municipalities?
March 1st.
March 1st, right?
The same as their application date, not
So-
recommended, by the way.
Okay. So if they don't make any decisions, it stays at the level it's at right now.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
And after March 1st, regardless of the decisions that are made or not made, then you can process applications.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you haven't heard any rumblings by chance from the school district or what they're contemplating or?
I'm playing phone tag right now with Brian Freeman.
Right. He has no inkling which way they're gonna go though?
It came as an email. I returned the call. I didn't get a call back today.
Yeah.
He's looking for some statistics to try and as guess. I'm not sure how he's going to apply them, but he was looking for some statistics from us so he can try and figure out what that impact would be. I don't know how you figure that out because I don't have the applications that we would be acquiring. But if you're going to double the income limit, pretty much. I mean, we're at 26, and you double it up to 50.
Gonna see a
Maybe it stands to
significant
reason that we take in at least double the number of
Oh, yeah.
people, right?
I agree.
But I would suggest that's making it a linear thought, and I don't think it is a linear thought. I think that we have an affluent community, and I think that our senior citizens nowadays are much better prepared for the retirement than they used to be in our parents' age. And I think that people have those resources, and I think that we are going to find that the number of applications just have to go up, but the higher you make that, obviously, the more applications we're going to have. If the county goes to, it doesn't even matter if it's a county, if any jurisdiction goes to the limit of 50,000, we'll advertise that the maximum amount is 58,400, all the way up to the 5% mark.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we will advertise that the limit is if you make under 58,400, you're going to get some level of benefit. But if not all the jurisdictions are there, maybe they don't get any town benefits, but they get school benefits and county benefits. That's the way it is right now.
Yeah.
So to keep it simple, I just showed you your limit. But we do have 3 different scales that we apply to the applications. We just have to look at the proper scale, which school district and.
So, Donna, just if we could make a decision tonight, over the next couple of months, to just do nothing, which doesn't mean we'd have to do any resolutions, and we would just stick with the town and village adopted 2010.
Yep.
That schematic still fits into the state's 3,000 to 50,000.
It certainly does.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's one end of the spectrum.
Yes.
I guess I'm trying, on the other end of the spectrum, if we decide like next week or the week after, we're gonna set a public hearing to have people come in and talk about it, wouldn't we need to have a proposed, like, what our scale's gonna be?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
And that decision rests
what
with
you
your
looking
board.
at, Bill?
I need to leave in 10 minutes.
Well, we're, because I think I don't think we can do any setting of a public hearing tonight
to
because
discuss it, right.
we would need to, as a
Determine what the scale's
board,
going
like,
to be.
right, I mean,
Yeah.
so I appreciate, the sooner the better,
Yep.
but I wouldn't even know what to start with a proposed scale if we're moving off of the one we currently have.
Understood.
I wouldn't know, so that,
Yeah.
very interesting. And the unknown aspect of it, because let's face it, like you said, you can double the applicants or whatever. We're still collecting that tax money. It's just gonna be
Correct.
redistributed over all the people who make less than that or not.
Right. So I would urge this board and any board that I will be presenting to, I've been invited to come present to the village as well. And I would urge any board to think seriously about that, because you will not lose any money by changing this income scale. You will be helping a certain demographic of your population who may need that further assistance due to inflation and other things. But what you will be doing is asking the other taxpayers to pay for that.
Right.
You have to remember that they also are suffering the same effects of the inflation.
Yeah.
So I just did a quick thing and I said, well, what if we went from 26,000 to 32,500? It's somewhere near the demographics that I gave to you from the Census Bureau, right? That would take the top end of the scale at 40,900, which is, somewhere between a 20-25% increase to the whole scale, because they're not, I don't know if you noticed, they're not exact increments. They change their increments as the scale goes up. And what would that mean to a non-senior person or a non-disabled person? That would mean $40,900 income would earn those demographics a 5% discount on their town tax bill, which is the same type of a wage that a person would earn at full time, making $19.66 per hour. So I found it helpful to put that perspective on it. If you take the salary of $40,900 in a household and divide it by a 40-hour work week, a household's bringing in $19.66 per hour. And I believe that you have people in your community who are not age or disabled eligible making that kind of money. And if you're thinking that that income level needs assistance in paying their tax bills from the other taxpayers, you're asking the other taxpayers to do that for them. It's a difficult decision. And I think that you should take your time.
Yeah, I'm very interested to hear what Mr. Freeman at the school says to you, because
Well, it's not gonna be his decision.
No,
He will
no,
he
but-
will advise the board.
He's
I'm
gonna do the
assuming,
presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, so he wanted to have enough information to put together his presentation,
Right.
so that's fine, but I don't know how to predict how many people would apply when we haven't defined a scale, and even if you could define a scale tonight,
Right.
I don't have those applications in front of me to analyze, so it's all really speculative.
Yeah.
It's the best
Well,
guess.
if we change the scale, I'm sure that we'll have more applicants. I mean,
You would
just,
definitely have more applicants, and I will tell you that.
the number, I don't know, but I'm sure it's gonna go.
Well,
If any of the scales change, our office will have more applicants. Okay, so the impact of the workload is given. That's a guaranteed that our staff will be processing more applications. It's also the most complicated exemption program that we have, and we get blamed for that, but it's really the archaic statute. It's been around since 1966. And it's just been...
Out of that tonight.
it's just been band-aided over time as our sources of income and our resources and our Our creativity to be able to save towards our retirement has changed a lot in that period of time, and the definition of income for this program has not. And that's how I get to have a 7-hour class and just talking about what's income.
Can I
The
make,
most applications you could possibly see would be 9,500. That's assuming that all people over 65 are making the minimum
And own a
in this
home.
town,
And own a home.
and own a home.
Because the Census Bureau is just telling you about the
Yeah,
people
you
who
got people that
reside
rent.
here. There's
So-
renters.
The worst case scenario, you're looking at 9,500 applications.
That's a lot of applications.
That's a lot of applications, because you have to rework their income tax return, every one of them.
Right.
And that we ask them to give us information that's not found on their income tax return. It's very frustrating. It's a
So, may I make a
Perspective,
suggestion?
that's all.
Because
Yeah.
your presentation on a very
point, though.
complicated thing really made it so a numbskull, I understand what you're saying here in this presentation, and that, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to work with you in the next couple of weeks. If you would potentially come back in 2 weeks well, you're looking at me like, are you out?
Is it a workshop?
A workshop.
Yes, because I'll be at the Village 2 weeks from tonight. So I
Okay.
have to be there at 7:30.
And we, tentative, because
Yep.
I would like to get, the most common tax bill in Webster is county, Webster school, and town,
Correct.
okay? I do want to understand a little bit more where the county is looking and where the school is looking. I want to see if we can come up with a couple of options, not too many, of we stay the same as we are now, maybe you do what you just said, the $40,000 a year thing, not going to the max that you got on the right side, I guess we see that option. And come back and kind of with a little bit more discussion on this to see if the board's like, are we thinking we should set up a public hearing in the next month or two for what? You know what I mean? We're not ready for that now.
No.
So, and if nothing comes in the next couple of weeks, then we won't have you in. But we'll have you in again once we put a little more meat on the bone.
Yeah.
The
It's hard to
options.
predict what
It
number
is.
we would get in and where those incomes would fall because I don't
Right.
have those applications to analyze.
You don't know. I
Don't
mean,
know.
Bill did the max, and I get the math he just did. It's a crapshoot.
Yep.
We get it, but,
It is.
so, thank you, Donna. Unless
You're welcome.
anybody has any other
No,
things.
Donna, thank you for a very
Yeah.
Right, she did a
comprehensive
great
Big time.
presentation. Thanks, I just think it deserves more discussion. My concern is if we go all the way to the 50, what does that do to the tax rate for the other people who live in town? We already struggle to stay under the tax cap, and I think your perspective of those who are working, who are under that age for this, or
Where's
the
their
disability.
assistance?
And that, they're actually going to help out the others as well. We have to look at this carefully. And interestingly, when I looked at it, I mentioned to the town attorney that I remember doing this in 2010.
Come on.
No, yes. Bill and I were both there.
I have a comment too, and it's something Donna and I have discussed numerous times, and she educated me on, and that's the fact that New York State has more exemptions than just about any other state in the country.
Yes.
So this is only one, and this is a very small one.
Right.
So basically, if you're paying property taxes, you're subsidizing a whole class of other persons and businesses, not-for-profits, other organizations. Not to mention, that's not anything against this particular exemption, but I'm just saying that we have an awful lot of exemptions in New York State, and this is just another one.
Donna, thank you.
You're very
Because
welcome.
this gives us the foundation
Yep,
to
we'll
get
keep
to the
talking.
next meeting,
Thank you.
whenever that is.
And we'll keep talking.
Well, that concludes our very interesting workshop for the evening, doesn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.